Captain Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge Command Center and watched the 3 alien ships appear in orbit. They came without warning, just like the reports from other colonies had described. One moment the sky was clear, the next moment 3 massive warships hung above the planet like dark clouds. Had been a soldier for 20 years before he took this job. He thought his fighting days were over. The colony was peaceful, just miners and families trying to make a living on the edge of human space. 3,000 people called this place home. 800 of them were children. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," said Commander Sanders from the communications station. Was young, maybe 25, and this was his first real crisis. His hands shook as he worked the controls. "Put it through," said. He kept his voice calm even though his heart was racing. The main screen flickered to life. The alien that appeared was tall and thin with gray skin and 4 eyes. Its mouth moved in a way that looked wrong, like it was smiling, but the expression held no warmth. "I am Ambassador Al of the Collective," the alien said. Its voice came through the translator as cold and precise. "You will surrender mining rights to this planet and 2 other human colonies immediately. You have 1 standard hour to comply." Felt his jaw tighten. "This is Captain Mitchell, Colonial Defense Commander. We've already responded to your government's requests through proper diplomatic channels. Ambassador Hayes presented our counteroffer last week. We're willing to negotiate trade agreements, but we won't surrender our colonies." Al's 4 eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand your position, human. This is not a negotiation. This is an order from a superior civilization. Your species is new to this galaxy. You will learn respect." "We respect all peaceful species," said carefully, "but we won't be threatened." "Then you will learn through pain," Al replied. The screen went dark. Looked up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, their weapons are powering up." Hit the colony-wide alarm. The sound echoed through every building, every street, every home. "All civilians to the underground shelters. This is not a drill. Move now." He switched to the military channel. "All defense personnel to stations. Get every ship we have in the air. Tell them to buy us time." "We only have 6 patrol ships, sir," said. "Those are warships up there." "I know what they are," said. "Do it anyway." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Watch the security feeds as people ran through the streets. Parents carried children. Teachers led whole classrooms toward the shelter entrances. Dr. Amy Park, the colony's chief medical officer, stayed at the hospital coordinating the evacuation of patients who couldn't walk. Had met Amy many times. She was a kind woman, always smiling, always helping others. She had 2 children of her own, a boy of 8 and a girl of 6. He saw them on the security feed, holding hands as their teacher guided them toward Shelter 3. "Sir, our ships are engaging," reported. "They're taking heavy fire." Watch the tactical display. Their 6 small patrol ships were like insects buzzing around giants. The warships barely seemed to notice them. Then one of the patrol ships exploded in a ball of fire. Then another. "Pull them back," ordered. "Get them to the ground before we lose them all." "Sir, incoming fire," shouted. "They're targeting the surface." The first shot hit the eastern residential district. The blast was visible from the command center, a column of fire that rose into the sky. The building shook from the impact even though they were 3 miles away. "Shelters at 60% capacity," reported Lieutenant Morgan from the security station. "We need more time." "Time is what we don't have," said. He grabbed the communications microphone. "All personnel expedite evacuation procedures. Forget the protocols, just get people underground." The second blast hit closer, felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. Alarms screamed throughout the command center. Smoke filled the air. "They hit the hospital," said, his voice breaking. "Direct hit on the main building." His blood ran cold. Amy was there, her staff was there. How many patients had they evacuated? How many were still inside? The bombardment continued. The ships fired methodically, targeting one building after another. They weren't aiming for the mines or the power plants or the military installations. They were hitting homes, schools, markets, places where civilians gathered. "They're targeting population centers on purpose," said. "This isn't a military strike. This is a massacre." Wanted to fight back, but what could he do? Their defense station was armed, but the weapons were designed to handle pirates and small threats, not military warships. He fired anyway. Every missile they had, every cannon, everything they could throw at the enemy. One missile got through. It hit the nearest ship on the lower hull. The explosion looked impressive, but when the smoke cleared, the ship was barely damaged. "Enemy vessel targeting our position," said. "Everyone to the bunker," ordered. "Now." They ran. The command center staff raced down the metal stairs into the reinforced bunker beneath the building. Was the last one through the door. He sealed it just as the ceiling above them exploded. The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered but stayed on. They were alive, at least for now. Pulled up the security feeds on the bunker's emergency terminal. What he saw made him feel sick. The colony was burning. Buildings were reduced to rubble. Bodies lay in the streets. The beautiful town he had protected for 5 years was gone. "Casualty reports coming in," said quietly. She was crying. "Shelter 3 took a direct hit. Shelter 7 collapsed. The hospital is completely destroyed." "How many?" asked. He didn't want to know, but he had to. Looked at the numbers on her screen. Her voice was barely a whisper. 2,100 confirmed dead, 800 more missing, presumed dead. Closed his eyes. 2,100 out of 3,000 colonists. The children in Shelter 3, Amy's children, Amy herself, probably dead in the hospital ruins. The bombardment stopped after an hour. The ships departed as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind only destruction and grief. Opened the emergency communication channel to Earth. His hands were steady as he typed the message, but inside he felt something break, something that could never be repaired. The message was short, just 7 words. "They killed our children. This means war." He sent it with full encryption to Earth's military command, to the president, to every authority that mattered. Then he sat down in the bunker's command chair and stared at the screens showing his destroyed colony. Sat beside him. "Sir, what do we do now?" The message from Horizon's Edge reached Earth 47 hours after the attack. It traveled through quantum communication relays, jumping across light years in seconds. When it arrived at military headquarters in Geneva, the duty officer read it 3 times before he understood what it meant. 2,100 dead, most of them civilians, most of them children. Within an hour, every government leader on Earth knew. Within 2 hours, the news networks were broadcasting footage from the colony. Surveillance cameras had captured everything. The alien ships appearing, the bombardment, the buildings collapsing, people running and dying in the streets. President Brandon Cole watched the footage in his office. He was 62 years old and had been president for 6 years. He had dealt with economic crises, natural disasters, and diplomatic disputes. But he had never seen anything like this. "They targeted civilians deliberately," said General Lisa Martinez. She stood beside his desk, her face hard with anger. Lisa had served in the military for 35 years. She had fought in 3 colonial conflicts. She knew war. This wasn't a military operation. This was murder. "How many colonies do we have in that sector?" Brandon asked. 47 within 3 jumps of Horizon's Edge, Lisa replied. "Total population of 90 million. If the attack again, we could lose millions." Brandon stood and walked to the window. Below him, the streets of Geneva were filling with protesters. They carried signs with pictures of the dead children. They chanted for justice, for revenge. "What are our options?" he asked. Admiral Jack Preston stepped forward. Jack was 50 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and steady eyes. He commanded Earth's first fleet, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "We can defend our colonies, we can evacuate vulnerable populations, or we can attack." "Attack," Brandon turned to face him. "We're talking about the collective, 12 alien species. Military forces that span dozens of star systems. They've been space-faring for 2,000 years. We've barely been off Earth for 100. "That's what they think," Jack said quietly. Brandon stared at him. "Explain." Jack looked at Lisa, then back to the president. "Sir, the public thinks we've spent the last 15 years building colonies and trade ships. That's partly true, but it's not the whole truth." "Go on," Brandon said. Lisa activated a holographic display above the desk. It showed Earth and its industrial moon bases. Then it zoomed out to show the asteroid belt mining operations. Then further to the shipyards hidden in the outer planets. "After the first contact with hostile aliens 30 years ago, we made a decision," Lisa explained. "We would appear peaceful. We would trade, negotiate, and follow diplomatic protocols. but we would also prepare for war. The display showed massive shipyards hidden in the rings of Saturn, construction facilities buried deep in the moons of Jupiter, weapons factories on Mars that the public thought were producing mining equipment. "We've been building ships," Jack said. "Warships, carriers, destroyers. We've developed weapons technology in secret that can punch through any known shield. Plasma torpedoes, quantum jammers. We've been preparing for this day for 3 decades. Brandon felt his legs go weak. He sat down heavily in his chair. "Why wasn't I told?" "You were told, sir," Lisa said gently. "In your security briefing on your first day in office, Project Deterrent, you signed off on the continued funding." Brandon thought back, 6 years ago. His first day. So many briefings, so many documents. He vaguely remembered something about military readiness and black budget projects. He had assumed it was normal defense spending. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. 2,000 combat vessels, Jack said. "Another 5,000 support ships, troop carriers, supply ships, hospital ships. We can field an army of 3 million soldiers with full combat gear and orbital support." The number was staggering. Brandon tried to process it, and the intelligence estimates they have about 1,500 warships, Lisa said. "But they're spread across their territory. They've been at peace for centuries. They're not mobilized for total war." "We are," Jack said simply. Brandon stood again. He walked back to the window and looked down at the protesters. They wanted justice. They deserved justice. But was this the right choice? "If we attack, how many will die?" he asked. "Theirs or ours," Lisa replied. "Both." Lisa pulled up casualty projections. "Our casualties in a full conflict, estimated 50 to 70,000 military deaths. Minimal civilian casualties if we control the engagement zones. Casualties, unknown, depends on how quickly they surrender." "And if they don't surrender?" Brandon asked. Nobody answered. The silence was heavy. Brandon turned from the window. "I need to think. Give me an hour." The military officers left. Brandon sat alone in his office and thought about the footage from Horizon's Edge. The children running, the hospital exploding. Dr. Amy Park, who he'd met once during a colonial tour, pulling patients from the wreckage before the building collapsed on her. His phone rang. It was his wife. "I'm watching the news," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Brandon, those poor people, those children." "I know," he said. "What are you going to do?" Brandon closed his eyes. "What I have to." After the call ended, he made his decision. An hour later, Brandon stood in the press room. Cameras from every network pointed at him. The room was silent. The world was watching. "My fellow humans," he began. His voice was calm and steady. 47 hours ago, the collective attacked the colony of Horizon's Edge without warning and without cause. They murdered 2,100 of our people. They targeted homes, schools, and hospitals. They killed our children. He paused, let the words sink in. They believed they were teaching us respect. They believed we would submit to their demands out of fear. They were wrong. Brandon looked directly into the main camera. "To the collective, I say this. You have started a war you cannot win. You attacked our children, and for that there will be no mercy. We did not want this conflict, but you have forced our hand. We will defend every human colony. We will protect every human life. And we will make certain that you never threaten us again." He took a breath. "To all human colonies, I declare a state of total war. All military forces are hereby mobilized. All defense protocols are active. We will bring our people home safely, and we will bring our enemies to justice." Another pause. "We are not a warlike species. We prefer peace. We prefer cooperation. But when pushed, when threatened, when our children are murdered, we will show you what humanity truly is. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the children of Earth, and Earth breeds warriors." Brandon's voice dropped lower, became harder. "They made a mistake. They thought we were weak because we choose peace. They thought we were helpless because we avoid conflict. They attacked us because they believed there would be no consequences. They will learn otherwise. This war will be swift. It will be decisive. And when it is over, the galaxy will understand one simple truth. You do not attack humanity. You do not threaten our people. And you never, ever harm our children." Brandon ended the broadcast. The world erupted. In military bases across Earth and the colonies, soldiers reported for duty. Ships powered up. Weapons systems came online. The peaceful human civilization that the galaxy knew was gone. In its place was something older, something dangerous, something that had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain and stayed there for 100,000 years. General Lisa Martinez stood in the operations center and watched the mobilization reports scroll across her screens. Every unit was ready, every soldier was armed, every ship was prepared. "How long until we're ready to launch the offensive?" asked Colonel Danny Green, her chief of staff. "We've been ready for 30 years, Lisa replied. "We launch in 72 hours. Admiral Jack Preston walked through the hangar bay of the orbital shipyard. Around him, 200 warships were being armed and fueled. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering. Fast, deadly, and designed for one purpose: overwhelming firepower. His crew worked with quiet efficiency. They weren't excited, they weren't eager, they were focused, professional, ready. "Sir, all ships report ready for departure," said Captain Steve Baker, his fleet coordinator. Jack nodded. "Good, get me Dr. Wright. I want to review the attack plan one more time." Dr. Wright was a military strategist who specialized in total war scenarios. He had spent 5 years developing Operation Cleansing Fire, the plan for a simultaneous strike against every military asset in the galaxy. "It's ambitious," said as he displayed the plan on Jack's office screen. "We hit 43 targets at once: shipyards, command stations, fleet bases, everything. If we succeed, we cut their military capability by 80% in the first hour." "And if we fail?" Jack asked. "Then we adapt and continue," said simply. "But we won't fail. They don't know we're coming. They think they're dealing with scared colonists. They're going to learn the truth very quickly." On the home world of Ambassador Al received reports of increased human military activity. He dismissed them. "The humans are frightened," he told the council. "They mobilize their pathetic fleet to defend their colonies. Let them. It changes nothing. We are superior in every way." "But the intelligence reports suggest they have more ships than we thought," said Council Member X. Al waved a dismissive hand. "Rumors. Even if true, quantity means nothing against quality. Our ships are battle-tested. Our weapons are proven. The humans have never fought a real war. They will crumble." Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassador Aura of the species stood before the assembly. "I urge immediate intervention," Aura said. "The attack on Horizon's Edge was a violation of every treaty and law, but the human response will be worse, far worse." "Why should we fear the humans?" asked Ambassador Al of the Alliance. "They are newcomers, weak, small." Aura's species had been spacefaring for 5,000 years. They had extensive databases on every species in the galaxy, including humans. "I have studied their history," Aura said quietly. "Their home world is classified as a death world, Class 9. Only 3 other species in galactic history evolved on such hostile planets. All 3 became apex predators. All 3 became conquerors." "The humans seem peaceful," Al protested. "They are peaceful by choice, not by nature," Aura replied. "And the just gave them a reason to stop choosing peace." Back on Earth, Brandon Cole sat in his office late at night. Tomorrow the fleets would launch. Tomorrow the war would truly begin. He thought about the children of Horizon's Edge. He thought about every parent who lost a son or daughter. He thought about Mitchell, alone in the ruins of his colony. This was the right choice. It had to be. Brandon picked up his phone and called Admiral Jack Preston. "Jack, are we ready?" "Yes, Mr. President, we're ready." "Then go," Brandon said. "Show them what happens when you threaten humanity." "Yes, sir," Jack replied. With pleasure. 3 months after the Horizon's Edge massacre, the leadership was confident. Their intelligence reported that human fleets were mobilizing, but no attacks had come. No retaliation, no vengeance. The humans appeared to be gathering their forces defensively, protecting their remaining colonies. Al stood in the military command center on their home world and smiled with satisfaction. The large display screens showed the positions of fleets throughout their territory. All secure, all ready. "The humans are cowards," he told Admiral Haz, the supreme military commander. "They threaten war but take no action. Soon they will come begging for peace." Haz was not as confident. He was a soldier with 40 years of experience, and something about the situation felt wrong. "We have reports of human ships near our border zones, small vessels, fast ones." "Scout ships," Al said dismissively. They watch us from a distance and run away. This proves their weakness. What Al did not know was that those small, fast ships were the deadliest vessels humanity had ever built. And they were not running away. They were hunting. Lieutenant Morgan stood in the cargo bay of one such ship, checking her equipment one final time. She was 29 years old, short and thin with dark hair tied back in a tight bun. She looked like she weighed maybe 120 pounds. That was before she put on her combat suit, which added another 60 pounds of armor, weapons, and technology. 5 minutes to insertion point, said Commander over the communications system. Captained the stealth ship Nightfall, and he was the best pilot in the fleet. His ship could slip past sensors like a ghost through walls. Looked at her team. 6 soldiers, all special forces, all volunteers. They had trained for this mission for 8 weeks. Tonight they would infiltrate Space Station, one of the largest military installations in enemy territory. Remember the objective, said quietly. We're not here to fight. We're here to gather information and plant the devices. Get in, do the job, get out. Questions. Nobody spoke. They all knew the risks. If they were caught, Earth would deny they existed. If they died, their families would be told they were lost in a training accident. But they all understood why they were here. On their suit patches, each soldier wore a small image of a child's toy. A reminder of Horizon's Edge. A reminder of why they fought. The Nightfall drifted close to the space station, matching its orbit perfectly. Brought them within 50 meters of the hull, close enough to use the magnetic grapple system. Launch in 3, 2, 1, counted down. The cargo bay door opened silently, and her team fired grapple lines that attached to the station's hull with soft magnetic clicks. Then they pulled themselves across the empty space between the two vessels. His heart pounded as she moved. One wrong move, one detection by sensors, and they would be exposed to the vacuum of space with nowhere to run. But human stealth technology was years ahead of detection systems. The station's sensors showed nothing. They reached the hull, pulled out a small cutting torch and began working on an access panel. The metal glowed red, then white, then melted away. Behind it was a maintenance tunnel, just like the intelligence reports had predicted. "We're in," whispered into her radio. "Copy that," replied. "You have 2 hours before patrol schedules change. Make them count." Led her team into the station. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dark, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. They moved quickly but carefully, following the blueprints they had memorized. Tyler Grant, the team's cyber warfare specialist, stopped at a junction point. He pulled open a panel and connected a small device to the station's computer network. "Accessing their systems now," Tyler whispered. He was 24 years old and looked more like a college student than a soldier, but his fingers moved across the holographic keyboard with practiced ease. "How long?" asked. 30 seconds to break their encryption," Tyler said. "Then I can copy their entire database." The seconds ticked by, watched both ends of the tunnel, her weapon ready. If any came around either corner, she would have to kill them silently. Gunfire would alert the entire station. "Done," Tyler said. He disconnected his device and closed the panel. "I've got everything. Fleet positions, supply routes, communication codes, weapons specifications. This is a gold mine." "Good," said. "Now for the hard part." They moved deeper into the station, heading for the reactor level. This was the most dangerous part of the mission. More security, more patrols, more chances to be discovered. But they made it, placed her hand on the reactor room door, and felt the vibration of the massive power source on the other side. This single reactor powered the entire station and the shipyard attached to it. "Plant the devices here, here, and here," said, pointing to 3 locations around the reactor chamber. "Set them for remote detonation. I want this entire station ready to blow on command." Her team worked quickly. The devices were small, no bigger than a coffee cup, and they used technology they had never seen. Quantum-triggered fusion explosives, undetectable by conventional scans, powerful enough to vaporize everything within a mile radius. "Devices planted and armed," reported Sergeant. "Remote triggers confirmed active." "Let's move," said. They retraced their path through the maintenance tunnels. Behind them, 3 invisible bombs waited in the heart of the station. When the time came, when Admiral Jack Preston gave the order, this entire installation would cease to exist. The team made it back to the hull access point without incident. was the last one through. She sealed the panel behind her, then pushed off toward the nightfall. Her grapple line retracted automatically, pulling her back to safety. Had the ship moving before the cargo door even closed? Within seconds, they were gone, invisible against the black of space. Mission successful, reported. Devices armed and ready. Outstanding work, replied. He checked his navigation display. We have 2 more targets this week. Station Velar on Tuesday, Shipyard Complex 9 on Thursday. Stripped off her combat suit and sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fatting, but she felt satisfied. 3 months ago, she had watched the footage from Horizon's Edge and cried. Now she was doing something about it. Across space, 20 other human special forces teams were conducting similar missions. They planted devices. They data. They mapped every base, every ship, every installation. They had no idea they were being infiltrated. In another part of the galaxy, Commander wasn't the only one operating a stealth ship. There were 50 of them, all invisible, all tracking fleet movements. Captain Jenny commanded the stealth ship Silent Wind. She had been shadowing a battle group for 6 weeks, staying just outside their sensor range. Her crew cataloged every ship, every weapon, every weakness. They move in predictable patterns, Jenny told her tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter. Same routes every time, same formation. They're not prepared for real combat. Maybe they've never needed to be, Ben suggested. Intelligence says they haven't fought a major war in 300 years. That's about to change, Jenny said. She transmitted her findings back to Earth through encrypted quantum channels. Every day, more data arrived at military headquarters. Ship types, weapons, shield frequencies, communication protocols. The military was being dissected from the inside, and they never knew it. At Earth military headquarters, Foster coordinated all the intelligence data. She was 32 years old and had worked in intelligence analysis for 10 years. Her office was filled with holographic displays showing every piece of information gathered from the field. We now have complete data on 17 colony worlds, reported to General Lisa Martinez. 43 military installations, current positions of 84% of their fleet. We know where they are, what they have, and how they're defended. Lisa studied the displays, weak points. Everywhere, said. Their home defense fleet is strong, but everything else is scattered. Their ships travel in small groups. Their bases are designed to resist pirates, not military assault. If we hit them simultaneously across all locations, they won't have time to respond or regroup. What about their quantum communication network? Lisa asked. Smiled. Tyler Grant broke their encryption codes 3 weeks ago. We're monitoring every message they send. They don't know we're listening. Lisa nodded slowly. The plan was coming together. Every piece was falling into place. When can we launch the operation? She asked. Whenever you're ready, replied. We have everything we need. On the home world, Admiral has sat in his office late at night, reviewing reports. Something bothered him. The human ships that kept appearing near their borders, then disappearing. The lack of aggressive action despite the threats. He pulled up historical data on human warfare. The Galactic Council's database had limited information, but what existed was troubling. Humans came from a world classified as extremely hostile. They had evolved as pursuit predators capable of tracking prey across vast distances. They were patient, persistent, strategic. Has requested more information from the Council. The response came from Ambassador Aura of the... The message was brief but chilling. You attacked their children. Do you understand what that means? Humans are protective of their young in ways most species cannot comprehend. They will not fight you in open battle where you expect them. They will hunt you. They will study you. They will learn everything about you. And then when they are ready, they will strike with overwhelming force. You have made a terrible mistake. Has read the message 3 times. Then he called for an immediate meeting with Al and the Council. We need to consider peace negotiations, Has said. The humans are too quiet, too patient. This is not the behavior of a defeated enemy. Al laughed. You fear ghosts, Admiral. The humans do nothing because they can do nothing. They lack the courage to face us. I disagree, Has said firmly. I think they're planning something big. Then let them plan, Al said dismissively. When they finally attack, we will crush them easily. We are the superior civilization. We have nothing to fear from primitive humans. The meeting ended. Has walked back to his office feeling deeply uneasy. His instincts, honed by decades of military experience, told him danger was coming, but nobody would listen. That night, he sent a private message to his family on the outer colonies. "Leave space," he wrote. "Find a neutral world and stay there until this is over. Do not ask questions, just go, trust me." On Earth, Admiral Jack Preston stood in the orbital command center and watched the final preparations. 200 warships were ready. 3 million soldiers were equipped and trained. Every target had been scouted. Every weakness had been identified. Dr. Wright stood beside him, reviewing the attack timeline on his tablet. "We can launch in 6 hours," said. "All teams are in position. All intelligence is current. We've never been more prepared for anything in human history." Jack nodded. "Send the message to all fleet commanders. Operation Cleansing Fire begins at dawn. Synchronized attacks across all 43 targets. Total surprise, overwhelming force, no mercy." "What about rules of engagement?" asked. Jack's face was hard. "They killed our children. There are no rules." He activated his communication system and broadcast to every human military unit across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Preston. In 6 hours, we end this war before it truly begins. They think we're weak. They think we're frightened. They think attacking our children would break our spirit. They're about to learn they were wrong about everything." He paused, then continued. "Every installation, every ship, every base is a target. We will hit them so hard and so fast they won't know what happened until it's over. We will show them what happens when you threaten humanity. We will show them what ruthless really means." "Dawn arrives in 6 hours," Jack said. "Make sure the enemy never sees another sunset." Across human space, soldiers and sailors received the message. They checked their weapons. They said quiet prayers. They looked at the pictures of Horizon's Edge's dead children that were posted in every ready room. Then they waited. The hunt was over. Now came the kill. The attack began at 600 Earth Standard Time, synchronized across 43 locations spanning 12 star systems. It was just another normal morning. For humanity, it was Judgment Day. Admiral Jack Preston stood on the bridge of the carrier ship Vengeance, watching the countdown on the main display. Around him in the fleet were 199 other warships, the largest attack force humanity had ever assembled. They waited in quantum jump formation, invisible to sensors, ready to appear directly in orbit around the enemy home world. "All units report ready," said Captain Steve Baker. "All weapons armed," reported Commander Lisa Park from Tactical. She was Dr. Amy Park's younger sister. Amy had died in the hospital on Horizon's Edge. Lisa wanted to be here for this moment. Jack watched the numbers count down. 10 seconds, 9, 8. "For Horizon's Edge," he said quietly. The fleet jumped. One moment they were in empty space at the edge of territory. The next moment, 200 human warships materialized in orbit around the planet. The home world, 3 billion inhabitants, the center of their civilization. Alarms screamed across every military installation on the planet. Defense stations powered up frantically. The home fleet, caught completely by surprise, scrambled to respond. "Enemy vessels moving to intercept," Lisa reported calmly. 73 warships in defensive positions. "Target their command ships first," Jack ordered. "Weapons free." The Vengeance fired. Rounds, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in microseconds. They hit the flagship before it could raise its shields. The rounds punched straight through the hull, through the armor, through every deck from bow to stern. The ship exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. "Target destroyed," Lisa said. "Engaging next target." All around the Vengeance, human ships opened fire. The sky above lit up with weapons fire and explosions. The fleet tried to fight back, but they were outmatched in every way. Human fired too fast to dodge. Human plasma torpedoes burned through shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Human missiles used quantum guidance that made them impossible to jam or intercept. Within the first 5 minutes, 30 ships were destroyed. Within 10 minutes, 50. The survivors tried to retreat, but human fighters were faster. They chased down every fleeing vessel and destroyed them one by one. "Home fleet eliminated," Lisa reported. "All enemy vessels destroyed or disabled. Orbital space is secure." Jack nodded. "Good, now show them we're here. Target their military command center on the surface. One shot, make it visible." Lisa entered the targeting coordinates. a single round fired from the Vengeance. It entered the atmosphere like a meteor burning white-hot as it fell. It struck the military headquarters with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The building and everything within 2 blocks vaporized instantly. The shockwave shattered windows for miles. 3,000 military officers died in less than a second. Target destroyed, Lisa confirmed. Jack opened a communication channel to the planet below. This is Admiral Jack Preston of the Earth Fleet. Your military is destroyed. Your home fleet is gone. We now control your orbital space. Surrender immediately or we will continue operations. On the planet's surface, chaos reigned. The government had never imagined this scenario, an enemy fleet appearing directly above their home world without warning. Their defenders swept aside in minutes, their command center destroyed. But Al was not on the planet. He was aboard the space station, the installation Morgan had infiltrated 3 months earlier. He watched the battle over on his displays and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. How did they do this? He demanded. How did they get past our sensors? How did they jump directly to our home world? Nobody had answers. The human fleet had technology they didn't understand. Stealth capabilities they couldn't detect. Weapons they couldn't defend against. Send reinforcements, Al ordered. Every fleet we have, defend the home world. But the reinforcements never came. Because at that exact moment, human forces were hitting every other installation simultaneously. At Shipyard Complex 9, the installation where it planted devices, Commander watched from the bridge of the Nightfall. All teams in position, reported Lieutenant Morgan from her assault ship. She led a company of Marines this time, not a stealth mission. This was open warfare. Execute, ordered. Triggered the remote detonator. 3 quantum fusion devices detonated inside the shipyard's reactor core. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from 3 star systems away. The entire complex, including 20 partially built warships and 8,000 workers, simply ceased to exist. Target destroyed, reported. Her voice was cold. She thought about Dr. Amy Park dying in the hospital bombing. No mercy. At Fleet Base, human ships dropped out of quantum jump and immediately engaged. The fleet stationed there consisted of 42 vessels. They managed to raise shields and return fire. But they were still overwhelmed. Human ships outnumbered them 3-1 and them even more. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, the fleet was completely destroyed. The humans lost 2 ships. At Colony Velar, a civilian world of 50 million inhabitants, human forces took a different approach. They didn't bomb from orbit. Instead, Captain Mitchell led ground forces in a targeted operation. Had recovered from his injuries on Horizon's Edge. His body had healed. His mind had not. He still saw the dead children every time he closed his eyes. He still heard Amy Park's final screams as the hospital collapsed. Remember, told his Marines as they prepared to land. We're not like them. We don't target civilians. We hit military targets only. Command centers, weapons depots, communication arrays. Leave the civilian population alone. His Marines nodded. They were angry, but they were disciplined. They were human. The landing was unopposed. Planetary defense was designed to stop orbital bombardment, not ground invasion. Forces moved quickly through the capital city, targeting specific buildings. The military command on Velar tried to organize a defense, but Tyler Grant's cyber warfare unit struck first. Every computer system on the planet went dark. Communications failed. Power grids shut down. Weapons systems went offline. The soldiers found themselves blind, unable to coordinate or communicate. Once Marines arrived at the command center, the defenders surrendered without firing a shot. Target secured, reported. Minimal casualties, civilian population safe. This pattern repeated across space. Military installations destroyed. Fleet bases eliminated. Command centers captured. In less than 4 hours, the military effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. At station, Al watched his entire civilization crumble on the displays. Report after report came in. Every fleet defeated. Every base destroyed or captured. Every communication relay jammed or disabled. How, he whispered, how is this possible? His second-in-command, sub-commander, looked at him with barely concealed disgust. You told us the humans were weak. You told us they would surrender. You started a war with a species you knew nothing about. They're primitives, Al said weakly. Newcomers to space. They shouldn't have this technology. They shouldn't have this capability. But they do, Az said, and we're paying the price for your arrogance. An alert sounded. Human ships appeared on their sensors, lots of them. Incoming vessels, the tactical officer reported. 20 human warships, they're targeting this station. Al felt his blood run cold. Raise shields, prepare to defend. But before they could act, something strange happened. The station's systems began failing. Power flickered, weapons went offline, the shields collapsed. What's happening? Al demanded. Tyler Grant, sitting in a command center thousands of miles away, smiled as his code worked its way through the station's computer network. He had planted digital during infiltration mission. Now he activated them all at once. Station is blind, Tyler reported to Admiral Jack Preston. All systems compromised, they're defenseless. Good, Jack replied, but we're not destroying it, I want prisoners. On station, the docking bay doors opened without authorization. Security watched in horror as human assault ships landed inside their station. Heavily armed Marines poured out, securing every corridor, every room, every deck. Mitchell was the first one through the command center door. He saw Al standing there, the gray-skinned alien who had ordered the bombardment of Horizon's Edge. The one who had killed Amy Park, the one who had murdered 2,000 innocents. His finger tightened on his trigger. It would be so easy. One shot, justice served. But he didn't fire. Ambassador Al said coldly, "You are under arrest for war crimes against sentient beings. You have the right to remain silent." Al stared at him in disbelief. "You're taking me prisoner? Why? Why not just kill me?" Stepped closer. His voice was quiet but filled with steel. "Because death is mercy, and you don't deserve mercy. You're going to stand trial. You're going to face the families of everyone you murdered. You're going to spend the rest of your miserable life in a human prison, remembering what you did. Death would be too easy." Al was dragged away in restraints. With him went every senior officer on the station. They would all face justice. Across the galaxy, the government broadcast an emergency message on all channels. The supreme leader, an elderly named Ara, appeared on screen looking defeated. "To all forces and to the human fleet," Ara said, "we surrender. Unconditionally, we beg for mercy. Please, no more destruction. We will accept any terms." The message went out at 10:22 Earth Standard Time. The war had lasted less than 16 hours. Admiral Jack Preston received the surrender message aboard the Vengeance. He looked at the displays showing space. Burning wreckage where fleet bases used to be, captured installations, disabled ships drifting in orbit. "Cease fire," Jack ordered. "All units stand down except all surrenders. The war is over." Captain Steve Baker looked at him. "Sir, our casualties." "Final count will take time," Jack said. "But preliminary reports show we lost 9 ships and about 2,000 personnel killed or wounded." 2,000 casualties, to defeat an empire that spanned 12 star systems, to avenge the deaths of Horizon's Edge. The cost was acceptable. "And casualties?" Steve asked. Jack looked at the numbers on his display. Military casualties, approximately 98,000 killed. Civilian casualties, minimal. We hit what we aimed at, nothing more. Steve nodded slowly. "They killed our children. We destroyed their military. We showed restraint even in revenge." "That's what makes us different," Jack said. "That's what makes us human." On Earth, President Brandon Cole watched the reports come in. Victory, complete and total. The military destroyed, their government surrendering, human colonies safe. He should feel triumph. He should feel satisfaction. Instead, he felt tired. General Lisa Martinez stood beside him. "It's over, Mr. President, we won." "Yes," Brandon said quietly. "But at what cost? Those 98,000 who died, they were people too, soldiers following orders. Most of them probably didn't even know about Horizon's Edge." "They served a government that murdered our children," Lisa reminded him. "They would have killed more if we hadn't stopped them." "I know," Brandon said. "And I'd make the same choice again, but that doesn't mean I have to like it." He activated the communication system to broadcast to all human colonies. "My fellow humans, the war is over. They have surrendered. Our colonies are safe. Justice has been served for Horizon's Edge. We fought not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice. We won not through cruelty, but through strength. And now we must show the galaxy who we truly are. Not conquerors, not tyrants, but protectors, defenders, the species that will fight when necessary but seeks peace whenever possible. Across human space, people celebrated. The colonies were safe. The threat was ended. The children of Horizon's Edge had been avenged. But in the military command centers, in the ships returning from battle, in the hospitals treating the wounded, there was no celebration. Only quiet satisfaction. The job was done. Captain Mitchell stood in the brig of his ship, looking through the transparent wall at Al. The sat in his cell, head in his hands. "I want you to know something," said. "I lost friends on Horizon's Edge. Good people, people with families, children, and I will never forgive you for what you did." Al looked up. "Then why spare me? Why not execute me?" His expression was cold. "Because the families of the dead deserve to see you face justice. Because your own people deserve to see what happens to leaders who start wars they can't win. And because every species in this galaxy needs to understand what happens when you attack humanity." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Welcome to the rest of your life, Ambassador. I hope every day feels like an eternity." Walked away, leaving Al alone in his cell. Outside, the stars moved past the viewport as the ship jumped 6 weeks after the war ended. The trial began. The Galactic Council had never witnessed anything like it. The courtroom was built in neutral space, on a space station maintained by the Council itself. Representatives from 40 different species came to watch justice being served. Al sat in the defendant's chair, wearing restraints. Beside him sat 17 other senior officials, all facing the same charges: war crimes, crimes against sentient beings, murder of civilians, genocide. The judges were a panel of 5 beings from 5 different species, chosen by the Council. The lead judge was Ambassador Aura of the one who had tried to warn them before the war. "These proceedings are now in session," Aura said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "The defendants are charged with deliberate attack on civilian populations, murder of children, and violations of every interstellar law regarding warfare. How do you plead?" Al stood. His 4 eyes looked around the courtroom, seeing the faces of dozens of species all watching him with contempt. "Not guilty," he said. "We were asserting our rights as a superior civilization." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several ambassadors shook their heads in disbelief. "Then we will hear the evidence," Aura said. For 3 days, the prosecution presented its case. Video footage from Horizon's Edge showed the ships appearing without warning. It showed the bombardment. It showed the hospital exploding. It showed children dying in the streets. Dr. Amy Park's sister, Commander Lisa Park, she described pulling her sister's body from the rubble. She described the 800 children who died that day. Captain Mitchell, he described watching helplessly as his colony burned. He described the civilians who trusted him to keep them safe and died anyway. Ambassador Hayes about the diplomatic process. She showed records of every peaceful negotiation attempt, every reasonable offer humanity had made. They had rejected them all and attacked without further warning. On the 4th day, the defense presented its case. Al's lawyer, an attorney named, argued that the attack was justified under law. "My clients believed they were dealing with an inferior species," said. "Under tradition, superior civilizations have the right to demand submission from lesser ones. The humans refused. The attack was meant to teach them their place." The courtroom erupted. Several ambassadors stood and shouted in outrage. Even some of the observers looked ashamed. Aura called for order. "Counselor, are you seriously arguing that murder of children is justified because you believed yourselves superior?" "I'm arguing that my clients acted according to their cultural beliefs," replied weakly. President Brandon Cole stood from the observer section. He had been granted permission to address the court. "May I speak, Your Honor?" Aura nodded. "You may." Brandon walked to the center of the courtroom. He looked at Al, then at the judges, then at all the assembled ambassadors. "The defense claims cultural differences excuse these actions," Brandon said. His voice was calm but firm. "Let me be clear. There is no culture, no tradition, no belief system that justifies the murder of children. None. If your culture says it's acceptable to kill innocents, then your culture is wrong." He turned to face Al directly. "You didn't attack military targets. You didn't seek honorable combat. You deliberately targeted hospitals, schools, and homes. You murdered people who could not defend themselves. You killed children. And then you smiled about it." Brandon's voice grew harder. You thought we were weak because we prefer peace. You thought we were inferior because we negotiate rather than conquer. You made the fundamental mistake of confusing kindness with weakness. And when we responded, when we showed you what humans are truly capable of, you surrendered in less than a day. He walked closer to Al's chair. You started a war with the most ruthless beings in the galaxy, not because we enjoy violence, not because we seek conquest, but because when you threaten our children, when you murder our families, we will end you, completely, without hesitation, without mercy. The courtroom was silent. Al stared at Brandon with something like fear in his eyes. I hope you remember this moment for the rest of your life, Brandon said quietly. I hope you remember the children you killed. I hope their faces haunt you every single day, because that's the justice they deserve. Brandon returned to his seat. The trial continued. On the 7th day, Dr. Amy Park was called to testify. But Amy was dead. Instead, they showed a recording she had made before the attack, a personal log where she talked about her work at the hospital. I became a doctor to save lives, Amy said in the recording. She smiled as she spoke, standing in her hospital with children playing in the background. These colonists are my family now. The children here are so full of hope and dreams. My own kids love it here. This is what humanity is about, building, growing, helping each other. We came to the stars not to conquer, but to thrive. The recording ended with Amy waving goodbye to the camera. 2 weeks later, she and both her children would be dead. The courtroom was quiet. Several observers were crying openly, even some of them looked uncomfortable. Al sat in his chair and for the first time looked down at his hands. He said nothing. On the 9th day, the judges returned their verdict. Ara stood to read it. We find the defendants guilty on all charges, she said. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The attack on Horizon's Edge was a deliberate massacre of civilians. The murder of children was intentional. The defendants showed no remorse and claimed cultural superiority as justification. She paused. However, this court must also acknowledge that the human response was proportional and restrained. Despite suffering massive civilian casualties, humanity targeted only military assets. Civilian deaths were minimal. When victory was achieved, humans accepted surrender immediately rather than seeking revenge. Ara looked at Al. This court sentences each defendant to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. You will serve your sentences in human maximum security facilities. You will never see freedom again. Al stood shakily. I request execution instead, please, not human prisons. Request, Ara said coldly. You murdered children, you showed them no mercy. We show you none, but we will not kill you. You will live with what you have done. Forever. Al was led away. The other defendants followed. The trial was over. After the trial, the Galactic Council held an emergency session to discuss the situation. Their empire had collapsed. Their military was destroyed. Their government had surrendered. What happened next? President Brandon Cole stood before the council to present humanity's proposal. The military will be reduced to a small defense force, Brandon said. Just enough to protect against pirates, nothing more. They will not be allowed to build warships or develop weapons of mass destruction. Human observers will remain in space for 3 generations to ensure compliance. He continued, the government will pay reparations to the survivors of Horizon's Edge. Every family that lost someone will receive compensation. The colony will be rebuilt with funding. Ambassador Al of the Alliance stood. And what of the people themselves? Will you occupy their worlds? Will you rule them? No, Brandon said firmly. We're not conquerors. We don't want their territory or their resources. We just want to make sure they never threaten anyone again. But their culture produced leaders like Al pointed out. How do you change that? Brandon was quiet for a moment. Cultural change has to come from within. We can't force it. But we can provide education. We can expose children to other species, other ideas. We can show them that there are better ways to exist in this galaxy than conquest and domination. Ambassador Ara nodded approvingly. A wise approach. The Council supports this plan. But another ambassador stood, one from a species called the... I have a question for President Cole. Humanity has demonstrated overwhelming military superiority. Your technology is decades ahead of most species. Your combat effectiveness is extraordinary. What's to stop you from conquering the rest of us? The question hung in the air. Every ambassador in the chamber leaned forward, waiting for the answer. Brandon looked around the room. "Because we don't want to," he said simply. "We came to the stars seeking trade, friendship, and cooperation. That hasn't changed. Yes, we have powerful weapons. Yes, we can wage war effectively. But we only do so when forced, when threatened, when our children are killed." He paused. "Every species here can relax. Earth has no imperial ambitions. We want to be partners, not rulers. We want to build together, not destroy. But understand this clearly. If you attack us, if you threaten our people, if you harm our children, we will respond with everything we have. And we will win. Always." The ambassador sat down slowly. "Thank you for the honesty." Ambassador Hayes stood to address the council. She had been humanity's diplomatic voice for years, and now she spoke for all humans. "We understand that many of you are frightened," said. "You've seen what we can do. You've seen how quickly we dismantled the military. You're wondering if you're safe from us." She looked around the chamber. "Let me make this absolutely clear. Humanity does not start wars, we finish them. They attacked us without provocation, murdered our children, and laughed about it. We responded with overwhelming force. But notice what we didn't do." Began counting on her fingers. "We didn't target civilians. We didn't bombard their cities. We didn't occupy their home world. We didn't seek revenge beyond what was necessary. When they surrendered, we stopped immediately. We could have killed millions. We chose not to." She walked to the center of the chamber. "This is who humans are. We're capable of terrible violence when necessary, but we prefer peace. We prefer cooperation. We prefer building rather than destroying. Don't mistake our restraint for weakness. Don't mistake our diplomacy for cowardice. But also don't fear us if you come in peace." The chamber was silent. Then slowly Ambassador Aura began to clap. Others joined. Within moments the entire council was applauding. "Well said, Ambassador Hayes," Aura declared. "The council recognizes humanity as a major power in galactic affairs. We invite you to join the Security Committee to help maintain peace across known space." Nodded. "We accept, but with one condition. We maintain the right to defend ourselves and our allies without council approval if the threat is immediate. We won't wait for committee meetings while our people die." "Agreed," Aura said. "The council understands." 6 months after the war, Captain Mitchell returned to Horizon's Edge. The colony was being rebuilt with reparations money. New buildings rose from the ashes. New families arrived to start fresh lives. But first, they built the memorial. A large plaza in the center of the colony with a wall of black stone. Engraved on it were 2,124 names, every person who died in the attack, men, women, and children. Stood before the wall and found the names he was looking for. Dr. Amy Park, her son Daniel Park, age 8, her daughter Sophie Park, age 6. He placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Beside him stood Commander Lisa Park, Amy's sister. She was crying quietly. "She would be proud of you," Lisa said. "You protected the survivors, you brought the killers to justice, you didn't let hate consume you." "I wanted to," admitted. "When I had Al at gunpoint, I wanted to pull the trigger so badly." "But you didn't," Lisa said. "That's what makes us better than them, that's what makes us human." They stood in silence for a while, remembering the dead. Other survivors came to the memorial. Parents who lost children, children who lost parents, friends, neighbors, colleagues. They placed flowers and cried and remembered. At the base of the memorial, someone had planted a tree. It was small now, just a sapling, but it would grow. In time, it would provide shade for people visiting the memorial. Life continuing despite death. Looked at the tree and thought about the future. The war was over. Justice had been served, but the galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. They were no longer the peaceful newcomers everyone could ignore or push around. They were protectors now, defenders, the species that would fight when necessary but always sought peace first. On Earth, President Brandon Cole met with his advisors to discuss the future. General Lisa Martinez presented new defense plans. Admiral Jack Preston reported on fleet modernization. Ambassador Hayes updated them on diplomatic relations. "The galaxy fears us now," said. "Not just the everyone, they've seen what we can do." "Is that a bad thing?" Brandon asked. "Not necessarily," replied. "Fear creates respect, but it also creates distance. We need to show them we're not a threat to peaceful species." "How do we do that?" General Lisa asked. "By being consistent," said. "By responding to aggression with force, but to friendship with cooperation. by proving that our words match our actions, by being exactly what we said we are, protectors, not conquerors. Brandon nodded. What about other species that might test us, see if we're really as strong as the war demonstrated? Jack leaned forward. Let them try. Every hostile species in the galaxy watched what happened to they saw a powerful empire reduced to nothing in 16 hours. The smart ones won't risk it. And the dumb ones? Brandon asked. Jack smiled grimly. We'll educate them quickly. 3 months later, a small empire called the Hegemony made threatening moves toward a human colony. They didn't learn from this mistake. Admiral Jack Preston took a single battle group, 12 ships, and parked them in orbit around the home world. He didn't fire a shot. He didn't need to. They saw the human warships, remembered Horizon's Edge, and immediately backed down. The message was clear. Humanity would defend its people, always. 1 year after the war, Ambassador Hayes attended a meeting of the Galactic Council. The topic was a trade dispute between two minor species that was escalating toward violence. Perhaps humanity should mediate, suggested Ambassador Aura. Your reputation for strength combined with fairness makes you ideal for this role. Considered it. We'll do it. But understand, if either side refuses the mediation and attacks the other, we'll intervene. We won't let conflicts escalate into massacres. Not anymore. Not while we have the power to stop them. Both species accepted human mediation immediately. The dispute was resolved peacefully within a week. This became the pattern. Humans as peacekeepers. Humans as mediators. Humans as the species that maintained order not through conquest but through the promise of overwhelming response to aggression. In human space, life slowly returned to normal. The war veterans received honors and support. The survivors of Horizon's Edge rebuilt their lives. The dead were remembered but not forgotten. Captain Mitchell left the military and became a teacher. He taught young officers about the cost of war, about the responsibility of power, about choosing justice over revenge. Commander Lisa Park continued serving in the fleet, rising to the rank of admiral. She made sure humanity never forgot the lessons of the war. Lieutenant Morgan became an instructor for special forces. She trained the next generation of soldiers in the skills and ethics necessary for humanity's new role as galactic protectors. Dr. Wright wrote a comprehensive history of the war. His book became required reading in every military academy. The final chapter was titled The Reluctant Warriors. Tyler Grant continued his work in cyber warfare, but also developed education programs for youth, showing them alternatives to their culture's violent traditions. President Brandon Cole served another term, then retired. His legacy was clear. Humanity had become a major power not through aggression but through defensive strength, not through conquest but through protection. 5 years after the war, an ambassador from a species that had previously been hostile to humanity came to Earth. His name was, and his species, had been close allies of the. Hayes met with him privately. "What can I do for you, Ambassador?" Was quiet for a moment. "I came to apologize. My government supported the before the war. We believed their lies about human weakness. We believed you were a threat to galactic stability." And now asked. "Now we understand," said. "You don't start wars, you finish them. You don't seek conquest, you seek peace. You don't target the innocent, you protect them. We were wrong about everything." He stood and bowed, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. "My government wishes to establish formal relations with humanity. We want to learn from you. We want to be your friends, not your enemies." Stood and returned the bow. "We accept. Humanity welcomes all peaceful species. We always have." Smiled. "I believe that now. We all believe it. That's why the galaxy is better with humans in it. You showed us there's a better way. Strength without cruelty. Power without corruption. Justice without revenge." He paused. "There's a saying spreading through the galaxy now. When asked about humans, species say this: don't start a war with them. Not because you'll lose, though you will, but because even in victory they'll show you mercy. And that mercy will shame you more than defeat ever could." Felt tears in her eyes, but kept her voice steady. "That's the highest compliment we could receive." "It's the truth," said. "You earned it with the blood of your children and the restraint of your response. The galaxy will remember Horizon's Edge forever, but not as a tragedy, as a turning point, the moment we learned what true civilization looks like." 10 years after the war, Mitchell returned to Horizon's Edge one final time. He was 72 years old now, gray-haired and slow-moving. The colony had grown into a thriving city of 50,000 people. New families, new children, new hope. He walked to the memorial in the center plaza. The tree that had been a sapling was now 20 feet tall, its branches providing shade for benches where people sat and remembered. The black stone wall with 2,124 names was maintained perfectly. Fresh flowers always lay at its base. The colony never forgot. Sat on one of the benches and looked up at the tree. He thought about Amy Park, who had saved so many lives before losing her own. He thought about all the children who died that day and all the children now playing safely in the parks because of what happened next. A young girl, maybe 6 years old, approached him. "Are you Captain Mitchell?" she asked. "I used to be," said with a smile, "a long time ago." "My teacher says you're a hero," the girl said. "You saved people during the attack." "I tried," said. "I couldn't save everyone." The girl looked at the memorial. "My grandmother's name is on that wall. I never met her, but my mom says she was brave." "I'm sure she was," said gently. "Everyone here that day was brave." The girl gave him a flower from the bunch she was carrying. "This is for the people who protected us. Thank you." She ran off before could respond. He sat there holding the flower and crying quietly, not from sadness, from hope. The colony had survived. Humanity had survived. The children were safe. That's all that mattered. Stood and walked to the wall. He found Amy's name and placed the flower beneath it. "We kept them safe, Amy," he whispered. "All of them, your children, our children, everyone, just like you would have wanted." The wind rustled through the tree branches above him. Somewhere in the city, children laughed and played. Life continued. Peace endured. Walked away from the memorial, his duty finally complete. Behind him, the names of the dead remained carved in stone, a reminder of the cost of war, a promise to never forget, and a warning to the galaxy. Leave humanity's children alone, or face the most ruthless beings in existence, not because they enjoy violence, but because they love their families more than anything in the universe. And that love makes them unstoppable. Eid toward Earth. The war was over, but its lessons would last forever. Didn't answer right away. He thought about the children he'd watched running to the shelters. He thought about Amy's smile. He thought about every family that had trusted him to keep them safe. "Now," said finally, his voice was quiet but hard as steel, "now we make them regret they were ever born." On the screens, the colony burned. In the distance, he could hear survivors calling for help, but sat in the darkness of the bunker and felt something cold settle in his chest. It wasn't despair. It wasn't fear. It was purpose. The thought they had taught humanity a lesson about respect. They were wrong. They had just started a war with the most ruthless beings in the galaxy. They just didn't know it yet.